Lyddie, Chapter 16, Fever. Taking the money from the bank was like having a rooted tooth yanked from her jaw. Then the most painful part passed. She pressed two whole dollars into Miss Bedloe's hand before going out on the town to buy Rachel's shoes and a shawl, to order a dress made for her. Having spent that much, Lyddie squandered 50 pence more to get the child a beginning reader and a small paper volume of verses that the bookseller recommended. All told, Lyddie had spent more than 2 weeks' wages. There was less than $1 in her pocket now left for the priceless sum she had withdrawn. She had tried not to think on it, it was for Rachel, wasn't it? How could she begrudge the child? The very next day, Bridget was slower than ever, and it was all that Lyddie could do keep from screaming. Time after time, she took the shuttle from the girl's clumsy hands, sucked the thread through the bobbin, and threw it into the race, raging the machine should stand idle for a few seconds. Bridget was on the brink of tears all day. At last, Lyddie exploded when once again the girl's inattention caused a snarl and ruining a piece. "You must mind, girl," she shouted. "Forget everything else but the loom." But I cannot forget," Bridget cried out. "Me mother's sick, unto death, no money for a doctor." "Here." She snarled all the change from her apron pocket and shoved it in Bridget's. "Here, that's for the doctor. Now mind the machine, eh?" The next few days went a bit better than those before. She coaxed a few words from Rachel, and the suggestion of a smile when she read aloud from the book of verses. Dr. Foster went to Gloucester, in a shower of rain. He stepped in a puddle right in his middle and never went there again. "Well," said Lyddie, "that mud season in Vermont, eh?" And Rachel smiled, encouraged. Lyddie tried to make a rhyme for Rachel herself. Uncle Judah went to Bermuda in the April rain. He sunk in the ooze right up to his snooze and was never heard from again. This time there was no mistaking the smile. Work was going better as well. Bridget was pathetically grateful for her gift, and she beat Lyddie to work in the mornings and had 2 of the machines oiled and gleamed before Lyddie even entered the room. Mr. Martin was very pleased. By Thursday he smiled across the room continually. Lyddie resolved not to glance his way, but she could see without looking that the little rosebud mouth was fixed in its prissy bow. How hot the room seemed. Of course it was always hot and steamy, but somehow, perhaps, if she hadn't been burning up, she could have kept her head up. But it was so hot, exhausting in that Thursday in May. She wasn't prepared. She had no defenses. He stopped her. He made her wait until everyone had gone. Just when she felt she must lie down or faint, he stopped her and put his fat white hands heavily on either sleeve, dragging his weight on her arms. He was saying something as well, but her head was pounding and she couldn't make it out. What had he wanted with her? She had to go. She had to see Rachel. Her whole body was on fire. She needed a cool cloth for her head, and yet he kept holding on to her. She tried to stare him down, but her eyes were burning in their sockets. "Let me go," she wanted to cry. She tried to pull back from him, but he clutched her tighter. He was bringing his strange little mouth closer and closer to her fiery face. She murmured something about not feeling well, but it made his eyes grow soft and his arms go all around her shoulder. What made her do it? Illness? Desperation? She would never know, but she raised her booted foot and stomped her heel down with all of her might. He gave a cry, dropping his arms doubled over, and it was all the time she needed. Her stumbled down the stairs, across the field, nearly falling at last into the door of number 5. He had tried not to follow. She did not go to work the very next day, or for many thereafter. Her fever raged, and she was out of her mind with it. Once she realized that someone was putting a cold cloth on her forehead, she raised her arms to bring it down over her burning eyelids. A tiny cool hand rested on her hot one and stroked it timidly. Somewhere, at a great distance, she heard a small voice croon, "There, there," and it was her heavy arms, and then her heavy arms was lifted and put back gently under the quilt. Dr. Morris was summoned. She tried to protest. She couldn't waste the money on doctors, but if the words came out at all, they came out too thickly for anyone to understand. The bell rang, but it was far away now. It no longer rang for her. People came in and out of the darkened room. Sometimes Miss Bedlow was spooning broth into her. Sometimes another of the boarders. Diana was there, and Bridget, though who would have sent for them? Bridget had brought some Irish concoction that Miss Bedlow seemed to be trying to refuse, but the girl would not leave until she had been allowed to spoon some of it into the patient's mouth. As always, whenever Lyddie swam up a fiery pool out of consciousness, she knew that Rachel was there by her bed, there besides her. She'll get sick, Lyddie tried to protest. Make her go away. Or move me to the infirmary. She's too frail. But either she never got the words out, or no one could or would understand. For whatever was in her right mind, Rachel was there. She woke one morning with a start. The bell was clanging, banging away at her dull, aching head. She sat up abruptly. The room swooped and dipped about her. More slowly, she swung her legs over to the side of the bed. When she tried to stand, she fell over like a newborn calf. Rachel, she called, help me. I've got to go to work. Rachel raised up from the other bed. You're awake, she said. Lyddie, you didn't die. She fell back to her pillow. No, she said weakly, not yet. We can still hop.